Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy. How are you, love?
I'm good. I am good. It is almost the end of my week.
Yep.
Today was manic. It was also gloriously sunny here in Dunedin, and
Yeah, it was a cracker.
tomorrow looks mental. I saw a high of 27, a low of 9.
What?
It's going to be a very interesting day tomorrow.
Wow. I realized today, Chewy, that I have a brand new full-time job. Should we tell people what my brand new full-time job is? Apparently, my brand new full-time job is this. Printing out, that's the cutter, by the way, so that's cutting them out. Printing out copious quantities of buffer product to then put on hoodies to sell to the world, including international requests that are coming in. so that's my brand new full-time job.
It's honourable work, working in the merch mines. It seems to be a payload of buffer gear.
I just think that because of what's happened in the last couple of weeks with the hikoi, what's happening with this government, there's something that's just hit at the moment. You know what I mean? And it's just the right time for the right reason, with the right product. And so, yes, a brand new full-time job. Something I didn't tell you guys last night. Maybe I did. It's such a blur. It's all just printing and cutting at the moment. Is that we made an order already for some people who have already purchased. Did I say that last night? Because remember what I said is we'll get all the orders and we'll order them on Friday. But because we had enough to get a free delivery, I just ordered some yesterday. So they'll be here on Friday. And then I'll order the rest of them on Friday. So half the week may well get printed up and stuff over the weekend to be out first thing next week. So good news for you. Tonight we're going to have a look at Christopher Luxon on RNZ taking credit for lowering inflation, but won't take responsibility for the unemployment numbers going up. That's going to be fun. Did you know that for the second day in a row, one of Christopher Luxon's coalition partners, the current Deputy Prime Minister, explained to the media how Christopher Luxon is, quote unquote, struggling as Prime Minister? So why these two minor parties are poking the bear, I don't know. We're going to have a look at Christopher Hipkins on breakfast this morning, talking about the government and talking about Seymour versus Luxon, and in that we'll also have a look at Winston Peters to tell us all how the Prime Minister is actually struggling, which is a unique thing, and more stuff as well. Look, we're not going to do family notices just yet because they sometimes take a bit of time, and we have a guest to come on with us for this evening. We do want to talk about a story. Well, I guess cuts to the health system are an ongoing story, but I saw a story in the weekend and it just felt like it had been buried because it was about in New Zealand at the moment, a whooping cough epidemic. And it just kind of felt that this was coming out on a Saturday, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about it. And then the article might have been RNZ, I'm not sure, or One News, talked about this whooping cough epidemic was announced on the same day as the national-led government was talking about all the new cuts coming to the health system. Bit of a slight irony there, you know. So I contacted Northland emergency doctor, Dr. Gary Payinda, and said, would you come on and chat about it? But since then, chewy, more stuff's happened in the health system and cuts. So let's welcome to the show, Gary. Gary, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going really, really well. Now, I'd like to kind of get the vibe of that first of all. I saw a headline in the ODT maybe yesterday about whooping cough being sort of escalating in the southern part of the country, but when it talks about epidemic, I mean, most people think because of the last 4 years, pandemic, virus, that kind of stuff. What do we mean when we're talking about an epidemic?
Well, pertussis does have cyclical peaks and troughs, right? It sort of comes and goes. It sort of burns its way through the community. Numbers much lower if people are well vaccinated, but as you probably know, people are not well vaccinated, and that's really the problem, right? There's a lot of kids out there who are susceptible to pertussis, and of course, this is a disease that we predominantly are worried about because of its effects on infants. So kids under 12 months of age can get really amazing amounts of respiratory obstruction and apneas where they stop breathing and can even die from pertussis. And that's not common in older age groups and in adults. Right. It can make you sick. It can give you sort of a long-term cough. In rare cases, it can be serious or deadly, but it's really the fatalities happen in that infant age group. And so we need people to be vaccinated, and they quite simply are not. And that's why you're seeing this outbreak. It's as predictable as anything. You could say the same for measles, rubella, you name it. We have a whole bunch of vaccine preventable diseases, and people are not availing themselves, unfortunately.
I think all people should need to do for vaccination is see a picture of an infant with whooping cough. I mean, the poor wee thing. And it's funny you would say that, Gary. Obviously, I understand that people. I only ever think about whooping cough when I think about infants, but you're saying because that's where it's dangerous, yeah, more dangerous.
Yeah, although I don't want to minimize how bad it is if you have to go through it, even as a child or as an adult. Yeah. You can cough so much that you break ribs, especially in the elderly. I mean, think about that. That's awful. You can cough so much that you lose control of your bowels or become incontinent of urine. You can cough so much and for so long without a breath that you actually black out. So yeah, pertussis is not fun. And the whoop is essentially the inspiratory sound of a person struggling to get a breath in. It's not nice.
We've all had sorts of public conversations around vaccines in the last 4 years. Just in general, I don't need specifics or numbers from you, but are we seeing vaccination rates drop off in the last 4 years, or is this a trend from pre-COVID as well?
Yeah, so I work up in Northland where rates have traditionally been extremely low. So what we're now seeing is that the country overall is having some rates as bad as the worst rates used to be regionally. And so, yeah, since COVID, since the amazing amount of misinformation and disinformation, since people have been getting their health guidance and their vaccine advice from Facebook rather than from a trusted health professional, you've seen rates go down and down. And I don't want to say that it's all misinformation and disinformation. That's a big part of it. But there's also issues of access. People come to me in the ED from rural and remote places, sometimes days later than they should, telling me it was really hard for them to get petrol money together to take the drive in here from Rawene or Kayo. It's not easy for some people to manage the essentials. And I think all of that plays into horrendously low vaccination rates. When they're telling you that you need to keep vaccination rates up around 95%, and lots of places are at 76%, you know that it's a ticking time bomb. And when you're told the national immunization rate is such and such, you have to realize that hides the fact of regional variations. where you can have 20 to 30% lower vaccination rates in some communities than others. So, and of course, those communities are then at risk of having epidemics come through like wildfire.
Again, more of a general question, but I'd be interested if you've experienced this. When I used to work at ZB, I can remember it was probably 2010, 2011, there was a measles outbreak in Waikato, and there was a whole bunch of people who didn't have their kids vaccinated, and it had nothing to do with sort of the COVID. It was more like didn't have to worry about it. But what happened then was all of a sudden, all these people who are probably more greenies and didn't want that part of it, all of a sudden started getting everyone vaccinated because they saw the result of what non-vaccinations were. When you see this kind of thing in public, generally the whooping cough coming up, does that spark people in general to sort it out, or do they just continue to ignore and continue to stay unvaccinated en masse?
Well, I think it goes both ways. Some people will suddenly pop up and say, I want the vaccine now. And then others will go down fighting. And I mean, you know, during COVID, there were some really epic cases of people in the UK and in the US being intubated for COVID, being told that there was a very high likelihood that they wouldn't survive because they had, you know, multi-system problems, multi-organ issues, and still denying the existence of the virus. So, you know, there's all sorts of people in the world, and there's all sorts of reactions to dangerous situations. I think vaccination is one of those things where we are just doomed to repeat history again and again.
Right.
And I mean, the reality is the better your vaccinations work, the more you can forget about them and take them for granted. And you can easily say, well, I don't want my kid vaccinated because all the other kids are, and my kid's safe. Ironically, these are often parents who themselves have been vaccinated, so they are safe. And then as soon as there is the first big media wave where they start talking about a tragic loss of an 8-month-old child, then it hits communities and they start saying, where is my vaccination van? Why isn't there one in my community? And yeah, I suppose that's just human nature. Do you think?
Yeah, maybe. Why haven't you helped me with my vaccination that I refused? It's your responsibility to help me. Get it?
Yeah.
Hey, the other part of this conversation that leads into is a conversation around funding, and I would like to ask you about this. This is the original story where the headline says on the day public health officials announced a whooping cough epidemic, staff at the National Public Health Services were told their jobs were on the line. Since then, nearly 1,500 more Te Whatu Ora roles face the axe. I just did a tweet recently that based on it's Margie Upper, isn't it, the CE, where she says, Te Whatu Ora has made some good progress towards living within our means, but we are still spending more than we have in our budget. Now, the tweet that I just did, and I won't read it out word for word, said something like, when they talk about living within their means, what they're talking about is an arbitrary number that this government has decided to give them. And there's another way they could live within their means, which is the government could just make an arbitrary number higher and give them more. But what they're trying to do is cut back and give them less. I also want to talk to you about when there was a story the other day about $42 million going into healthcare for new doctors. So on one hand, the government seems to be saying, look what we're doing, all this money for doctors. And then on the other side, it's like, you don't have enough money to actually staff your organization as well as you can. Too long, that question, big ideas, but love your thoughts.
Yeah, the announcement of more doctors was really fascinating because at first blush, you want to be reasonable and say, wow, Shane Reti and Lester Levy have found the money to put an additional 42 million into 50 doctor roles, about 75 nursing roles, and 12 million of that is for like minor improvements to hospitals. And so initially you want to say, this is fantastic, we need more of this. Then in talking to people about the actual details of this, you learn that it's not an additional 42 million. They have repurposed this money from elsewhere within the budget
Of course they have.
And again, I'm not a lawyer, a politician, or whatever, but this is what smart people have said, and I believe it to be true. They've not come up with more money; they've repurposed money. So you have to start asking yourself, all of the horrendous cutbacks in healthcare staffing, these recruitment freezes, the fact that my colleagues say they cannot fill roles. People leave the Te and the role will not even be advertised. Wow. And so it just goes on as a vacancy. And then other people are having to work ungodly amounts of hours to try to compensate. We have, I was going to say stories. They're not stories. They're real. I know these people who are foregoing their breaks because they're so understaffed. They need to stay on duty and eat their lunch at their job, at their work, because they don't feel that they can safely go away. What used to be 2 staff workers positions has now been reduced to 1. So, so going back to the 50 doctors, it might be a start if it was in genuine funding, but it's been taken from somewhere else. And then the bigger question should be that the journalists are not asking them is, wow, 42 million sounds like a lot of money to a regular person. And it is, but it's actually the money they're putting into these new doctors and nurses, it satisfies 3% of the shortage.
Right.
In the case of doctors, 3%. In the case of nurses, about 3.5%. So this is pissing in the wind. It's craziness that they would have a media photo opportunity in an underserved area with like a little mini press conference to announce that they have repurposed 3% of doctors and nurses staff deficit. So what about the other 97% that we're missing? Does that get a photo opportunity? Does that have its own little show on the news? Of course not.
So if that's 3%, that means you've got a times by about 33. That's over $1 billion needed to actually fulfill the shortfall. So
Shane Reti said, I think it was half a year ago, that there were something like 485 GP positions that were vacant that needed to be filled nationwide. That's a lot. You add that to the best estimate we have of the hospital doctors, missing about 1,000, I'm going to look this number up because I don't want to get it wrong, 1,140. So that comes out to 1,600 doctors that we were down. And of course, that number probably has gotten a little bit worse because there has been attrition and people have left the service and have left the country in some cases. I don't need to tell you that right now it's not a hot time to want to go into general practice.
Yeah.
So,
just to work it out exactly, I just did it. It's 1.386 billion. And because we do like to beat a dead horse here sometimes, I'm just going to remind people, 3 billion to landlords, 14 billion in tax cuts. And what I hear you saying is the money that we need for the healthcare, in addition, new money, you're talking about repurposed money. So new money is, say, 1.4 billion. So half of what we're giving the landlords would suffice the system that we need to get set up if we could.
Yeah, Pat, you also don't want to ask what could we get for another billion. If you take just a fraction of the money that we gave to landlords, you could pay for free dental care for every New Zealander. I mean, come on. The magnitude of the money that went to the landlords is astronomical. It's $2.9 billion in tax deductibility that they got. And okay, I want to make it clear. I've had some personal interactions where people said, my elderly relative has a rental unit. It's what's going to get them through retirement. Mm-hmm. And to that, I would say I have every feeling for them. And we could easily government could have easily crafted a law that helped the humble mom and pop landlords with maybe one extra unit. And instead, they gave 2.9 billion even to the people with 70 rental units, even to the multimillionaires. They estimate that the top 300 landlords will each make $1 million extra a year as a result of these tax breaks. That did not need to happen.
And when we're going to talk about this later in the show, but when you talk about the money, there's a question put to Christopher Luxon today, or not today, we're playing it today from RNZ about when are we going to get back into surplus? Oh, yep, I can't commit to that right now. But you guys said 25, 26. Are you still, no, we can't talk about that now because they've got nothing in the coffers because they've given it all away, which also means there's nothing in the coffers to provide this extra new money that the health system needs. The piggy bank's empty. Chewy, you've been very quiet sitting here listening to me and Gary
what
talk.
did I say last night? I said you need to be concerned when I'm being real quiet.
Okay.
I think you guys are being very negative, and I want to highlight some of the positives here. Sure, nursing graduates don't have jobs. Sure, we've got hospitals with no doctors, which to my mind is I don't think it's a hospital anymore. I think it's just a building. And let's just look at the wins. Milo is in every staff room now. That's guaranteed. He's done that. That's done. Like, that's a win, right? We're talking about the big stuff. Sure, we've come out of a global pandemic. Sure, everybody acknowledges there's probably another one on the way at some point in the near future. We don't need a robust health system that's ready for that. We don't need something that can deal with a very predictable pandemic of a childhood illness that has killed someone in Australia this week. It's expensive. Can't afford it. It's like going to the supermarket and asking mum if you can have a chocolate bar. Healthcare is the chocolate bar in the trolley. We can't get it. Can't get it. Landlord tax cuts. That's definitely at the front of the trolley. This government, like I've been saying, they're wreckers and they're vandals. They're economic vandals that are taking the things that we have collectively paid for over generations and built up, and now they're swinging the axe, and we have cashed up politicians and cashed up backers of those politicians ready to swoop in for the fire sale that is coming. They are going to privatize everything. They are going to try and pull off what the Tories in England have been doing too slowly for Lester Levy. He wants to turbocharge this. If that man could drive a bulldozer through every hospital emergency ward in the country, I believe he would with a smile on his face. You
left one thing out. You left one thing out, Chewy.
What's that?
$216 million was set aside so they could have the excise tax on heated tobacco products so that one company, Philip Morris, could get more customers, more profit, more money, more sales. This whole scene is wretched. Somehow they found the money to help Philip Morris out, but they're not finding the money to help education or health or the police out. It is dastardly.
I completely forgot about boiled tobacco products.
Yeah, let's have a look at that.
Terrible product.
Because we haven't put it in the show notes for people, but just so you know, there's a story on One News tonight exactly about this topic to do with the health system cuts. Now, nobody's necessarily prepared to comment on this in a professional manner, but I'm sure all of us will have some feels when you see what One News revealed about some of the people that are being cut are also some of the people that are supposed to be helping get the number of smokers down. And let me just tell you this, to keep an eye on, Fano, it's a very small increase, but technically smoking, the number of people smoking has increased since this government's started. It's only gone from 6.8% to 6.9%, it says it in the story, but technically that's the graph moving in the wrong way for this 2025 objective. Let's have a quick look.
Those proposed Health NZ cuts include specialists who help Kiwis quit smoking.
There you go.
That's despite the government revealing a new smoke-free action plan today with a focus on improving access.
A smoke-free action plan whilst they get rid of professionals to help quit smoking. Got it.
To services to help smokers quit. Experts say the proposed cuts make a mockery of the plan, as Jacob Johnson reports.
Time is running out to stub out cigarette use, with a goal to get smoking rates under 5% by the end of 2025. Many are still struggling to give up.
I'm down to 3 or 4 cigarettes a day instead of a pack a day.
It's hard to stop. It's like breakfast and dinner, lunch.
In order to achieve the smoke-free 2025 goal, 80,000 people need to quit over the next year. The latest figures show daily smoking rates are at 6.9%, up from 6.8% the previous year.
So, an increase. Very small. If it was a political poll, you'd say margin of error, but it is going in the wrong direction.
We did kind of, to some extent, take our eye off the ball over the last year.
Casey Costello today announcing a final...
Sorry, understatement of the year. They didn't take their eye off the ball. They moved away and let the ball come straight through and knock everything over. They helped the ball knock the wickets over.
push to try and get there based on 4 pillars. Reducing uptake by making cigarettes harder to get, increasing quit attempts with a marketing blitz and incentive schemes, supporting those who have quit with more products, and improving access to quit services.
When you're at the doctors and they refer you to quit smoking service, that had kind of dropped away.
But just hours later, the Public Service Union claimed Te Whatu Ora was looking to cut its dedicated smoke-free team.
It sounds like one arm of government not talking to the other arm. So that's going to particularly cripple even some of the potential benefits that might have come about through this new plan.
Casey Costello disagrees, telling One News many of the quit services come from contracted community providers like this one in South Auckland.
The other services that are being cut, I believe, are those that help to coordinate, monitor and support some of those community providers.
The government's faced scrutiny over its stance on smoking since day one, repealing plans for a law that would ban the sale of cigarettes to anyone born after 2008, reduce the number of stores that can sell tobacco, and remove nicotine from cigarettes. Casey Costello's also been criticised for halving the excise tax on heated tobacco products. This health professor says her new plan lacks ambition.
There's nothing particularly inspiring or new. It feels like a very light touch, and I just don't think it's going to cut the mustard.
We're reinvigorating what was working and driving that connection.
She maintains the 5% goal is achievable with just 13 months to go.
There you go. 80,000 people in the next 13 months have to stop smoking to achieve that target, and currently, incrementally, tinily, it's on the increase. Gary, like I said, I know we're not necessarily got all the nuts and bolts about this, but surely you've got something that you can offer us about what you're seeing in that story, which is indicative of what we're seeing in the health system.
Well, what can I say that wasn't said in the piece? Big Tobacco could not have found a better government, a more friendly government to help their aims than this one. Literally cutting the excise tax in half in order for one company alone, Philip Morris, to sell more heated tobacco products. It's atrocious. It's insane. Getting rid of what was widely acclaimed as the world-leading legislation to reduce tobacco deaths and tobacco harm. They canned it. They canned all the elements of it wholesale. Even if you were a little bit against one aspect of it, you certainly would have let through the non-controversial bits of it. Instead, they threw away all of the aspects, reducing the number of stores, reducing nicotine content, etc. This is a pro-tobacco government. There's no two ways about it. And I don't know if you've talked about this before, but if you look at the tentacles of Philip Morris and of Big Tobacco that reach into this government, there's too many coincidences. We've got ministers that were tobacco lobbyists for Philip Morris. We have heads of campaigns for one of the 3 coalition partners who left the campaign, running the campaign when they got into power, and went to work for Philip Morris. It's wild. it's awful. And I feel like this is a government made up of lobbyists rather than of health advocates. And yeah.
I think the one thing I'll disagree with you on, Gary, is when you said they were tobacco lobbyists, because to me, it basically seems that they probably still are. They may not admit that, but I don't know if the were thing I can agree with, because if they're not still playing that role, then they're doing better than any other tobacco lobbyists, aren't they? Getting stuff through.
Yeah.
Chewy?
Yeah, I lost respect for the health minister right about the time that he did not come out more strongly against smoking and against tobacco and in favor of the smoke-free legislation. I don't know how you can be a doctor and do anything that would promote tobacco use in society. It's atrocious. It's a huge killer. And it doesn't just cause lung cancer or emphysema. Those are bad enough. It also contributes, as you know, to heart attacks and cancers of all kinds. And to think that we would be helping that business along is, to me, unconscionable.
Hey, Gary, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Chewy, is there anything else you want to ask or mention before we let Gary go?
No, I just want to thank you for coming on the show again, Gary. You're an absolute champion, and it's great to have someone come in and really pull for your colleagues.
Yeah,
I'm more than happy to be here. I think it will be a good thing if more doctors speak up and speak out. And I want to just do, can I have 1 minute to speak to my colleagues?
You can have as long as you want, Gary. We'll leave
Yeah,
if
so
you want. You can have the whole show.
having gone through some unpleasant situations with my own, let's just say, patient advocacy, I would say this to doctors that are fearful of speaking up, who are fearful of censure or worried about their jobs. I would reiterate that as long as you're speaking in a personal capacity, Te Whatu Ora or any other health employer can't censor you. And even more to the point, you don't just have the right to speak up, you have an obligation to, under the Medical Council of New Zealand, which is very explicit in saying to doctors that we've got to advocate not just for the patient in front of us, but for patients in general. So I hope that frees up some concerned doctors out there to speak up, to let us know how things are going, both the good and the bad, and to not be frightened.
We obviously get the subtext of what you're saying, Gary. My question for you personally, my question to you is, has this been the fear of speaking up for doctors? Is this more of a reality under this current government? Like, has it become more pressured? I'm going to say, you haven't said, but to like be a good doctor and not speak out under this guy than the last lot? Or is it pretty much always potentially a bit of an embarrassment to whatever government if doctors speak out?
I think any government wouldn't. I mean, they're politicians, right? They don't want negative publicity. So I understand that any government wouldn't want it. But this government has had sort of record numbers of non-disclosure agreements signed. It's been very quick to gaslight healthcare workers. So, you know, when the nurses said, hey, we're understaffed, we are understaffed by about 4,000 nurses. Yes, government has hired, is it 1,200 or 1,500, gotten us about halfway there, but that's all that was budgeted for. And so after that, the government essentially said, we've hired too many, we've over-recruited, and we are in a surplus situation. Meanwhile, nurses were looking at their wards and at their EDs and their ICUs saying, what are you talking about? We've over-recruited. We're on a skeleton crew here. So I'd say this government has been more unique than other ones I recognize from the past 17 years living here and working here in Northland, for creating its own alternate reality. It manufactures a world in which, Levy recently was saying that Health New Zealand doesn't need extra money. It's doing fine. And in fact, he needs to cut $1.4 billion more from the Health New Zealand budget. Mm-hmm. So if you can make sense of that one for me, patients know that it's absurd. Staff know it's absurd. And you're starting to see some people come out and say it. And I mean, the sad thing is a lot of the ones who are speaking out are speaking like that cardiologist in Tauranga eloquently spoke out. He then left the public health system. He quit public service and went to private. You've got retired physicians, like I think his name is David Galler, who has been outspoken. He's retired now. He's in a position of relative safety. And then you had Pragati up north of us who spoke out about the doctorless hospitals. Bay of Islands, Kaitaia, Dargaville struggling to get staff. And she did that just prior to resigning her role. So I'll leave that for you to decide if you think there's risks in speaking up. I've said enough.
Well, just to make it clear, he's a Northland emergency doctor who is speaking to us tonight in his personal capacity. It is Dr. Gary Payinda. Hey, Gary, thanks so much for joining us. Let me just say, the chat is going, there is lots of love for you and thankfulness to you from me and Chewy, but also from the people watching for coming out and sharing with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Well, I give thanks back to all of them.
All right, Gary, all the best.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Chewy, let's get to some chats and super chats, shall we? Do you want to have a squiz? I'm going to grab a drink.
Yep, absolutely.
I see you got your drink. I noticed that. Don't tell me I didn't notice. I'll serve myself though.
Do you know why I got this drink, Pat? I'll tell you. Did you know? You may have noticed just as you asked me a question, I completely disappeared. I noped
yes,
out.
you did.
Just fucking out of there. That's because the bride of Chewy locked herself out of the house, and so I was banging on the door. So I had to go and let her in, and this is an apology, and so is the Chocky Vicky.
Oh, damn it!
So there you go. That's what you have to do. You have to lock your wife out of the house, and you get a cup of tea. That's what I've learned.
We recently installed one of those code things on the back door, so now you can't get if you know the code. You can't get locked out of our house. So the kids don't need keys. It's like you just come in, and get yourself in. From Kiwi Bird, for the love of beards, get your kids vaccinated. You wouldn't. I Campbell for $9. Thank you for your super chat. I almost died as a baby from whooping cough. Myself, please get vaccinated. Like I said, I don't know how anyone could watch, and I'll show it again, this, and listen to this.
There we go.
Not being able to breathe.
I don't have kids, man, but like I don't. Yeah. How could anyone go, yeah, I'll roll the dice on that?
Okay.
Hasn't had a breath yet. There we go. Just got a breath. Like I just don't know how anyone can watch that and go, the vaccinations, bloody Bill Gates, bloody this, bloody that. It's different now because that wasn't so much that perhaps before 2020,
well,
but now.
I mean, it's two things as well. Look, I don't necessarily want to go down the track of saying, well, it's all because of anti-vaxxers. I'm also not saying that hasn't had an effect. I think this is one of those things that, like, it's a classic poverty indicator, right? People with poor access to healthcare, or poor services in the area, or perhaps something that we've spoken about a little bit. Like biases in our healthcare about who gets care, what areas receive funding, what if you're in a poor rural area and you have to drive for hours to a hospital, or there's not a GP in your area, what chance do you have to get your kid vaccinated?
Yeah.
And this is what these guys are doing to our health system. They're making, like, we weren't cruising. We didn't have a gold-plated health system where everybody could access doctors and healthcare at the drop of a hat. And now these guys have made it worse.
Yeah.
In record time.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We've always said that, you know, you kind of expect incremental changes from each government, but these guys have come in and have just kicked the legs out from under of so many parts of society, done it so quickly. Because normally in the first term, you kind of get your feet under and then the second term you start doing, and then the third term you go hard nuts, and then you get voted out. These guys are treating this like a third term now.
They're swinging for the fences, Pat, on everything. It's ideological stuff that is just driven. They're not listening to anybody. It is like they're working off a bullet point list that they came together like months and months ago. This is what we're going to do, and we're just going to do it. We're not going to listen to anybody. Once we've done the damage, it'll be too hard to put it back together.
Yeah. Mr. Harvard, Gary, you're such a legend. Lots of love for Gary in there. Rajan says, I recommend H-Bomber Guys vaccine video to learn about the history of the anti-vax movement. Andrew Wakefield started this shit for money, vile person. I'm going to bookmark that and go and have a look at it. Kiwi Bird says, we need to make cuts. Dr. Retty says, eyeball, kissy face. Willis says, we need to make cuts. Dr. Retty.
I'd do that for you, babe.
Sorry, late fee. Thank you from the POM. And also apologies to It's in the Ballot. We didn't get a chance to ask a question, but the question was, what's the best way to explain a vaccine preventative medicine, not a treatment option at point of infection? I apologize, we didn't get to that. I did have a look as well, so I just missed it. Right. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're going to move on. I'll do one, Chewy, and then you can talk about the last night for, if you like. But the one I will do, I will just remind you, and I'm only showing you this, guys, because I know what's going to happen. People on the weekend are going to go, can we still get that stuff? Can we get it? Can we get it? And because I'm desperate to have all of this stuff out before Christmas, we are going to cut this off Friday night after the show. It doesn't mean it's not, it may well come back next year. Like, I'm not saying last time ever, we're not doing that, because this is pretty cool merch, right? We got that, especially that orange hoodie. I'm going to get into one of those. I'm getting into one of those, Chewy. Absolutely. bhnshop.nz. If you're interested, there is a sizing guide there. Can show you how to get your exact sizings for the hoodies and for the t-shirts. You get other t-shirts to have a look in there. Go in there and have a look, select, purchase. Being honest, the buffer gear is probably, for every 5 orders, 4 of them are buffer gear. For every 6 orders, 4 of them are buffer gear. So, as I said, there is a moment and a reason and a product that you guys are liking. So
we might end up being the official clothing sponsor for Hikoi 2.0. That'd be pretty special.
So just if you want it before Christmas, get yourself there before Friday, bhnshop.nz. And I'm honestly seeing sales pop up every hour right through the day. So word spreading around, tell others. I've had people wanting them for Christmas. I've had people moving over from America wanting to get stuff. It's honestly, I know I was kind of joking when I said I've got a new full-time job, but there is an element of truth in that. There's a lot that we're doing. We are going to get it out to you. There'll be probably half of the order done by this weekend, and the last half will be done by mid next week, because I'll order the merch on Saturday, which means they won't get it till Monday, which means it'll turn up on Wednesday. So end of next week, which is what we always said, 14th of, that's way earlier, actually. That's like the 7th of December. I said it'll be out by the 14th of December. I'm talking about having it out by, if I order it there, it comes there. We'll be posting it. Yeah, we'll be posting at the end of next week, which is the 7th of December, or the start of the week after, which is the 9th of September. And I said it would be out before the 14th, so that still gives like 5 full days. So we're on target. We're working hard to get it to you. Chewy, would you like to tell us about anything? Do you have some notices to tell?
It's the last hours to vote for us in the New Zealand Podcast Awards. We demand recognition. We crave it. I told my mum we would get it again. Make me a liar.
We never get anything in the other awards. I think part of that is because you're supposed to do it in MP3, and I always send them in MP4. That could be part of the reason, because we have visual stuff that goes with us as well, but maybe they don't even look at ours. But Listener's Choice is a place that we've got it stuff in there before. To be honest, it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of fun kind of sticking it up the mainstream, who are the ones who end up winning everything in the actual real categories. So if you're interested, nzpodcastawards.com, in the show notes of whatever you're watching us on, I think, in the show notes is the link to the podcast, because they want a podcast link. So you need to put in the one that goes either to Apple or Spotify, right? Not the link to the YouTube channel. So but that link is also in the show notes. And here's something else. Thank you, people. Here's something else. Send it out to your friend groups. Yeah. So if you can get 2 other people to vote tonight, then who knows? Maybe we'll do something. I think we need to get into the next story, and we'll do another little notice after the next story, because I think it's probably time to get going. Let's have a look at voted last night. So yeah, all right, fair enough. Let's get into the story with Chippy this morning on breakfast. Let's find my notes. I think it's that one, isn't it, Chewy? It is. So on breakfast this morning, Mr. Hipkins. It's interesting how he's calling him Mr. Hipkins now. What do you think, Chewy, about the Americans still calling their officials by their highest title? Like, they still call Trump President Trump. They still call like Mike Huckabee governor, because like 10 years ago he was a governor.
Yeah, I think that's weird.
Like, what's his name? The Giuliani. They still call him Mr. Mayor because he was the mayor. They keep their titles. You think it's an odd thing?
Mr. Four Seasons.
Yeah.
That was the highest level that Giuliani ever achieved.
So Mr. Hipkins.
Yeah, no, it's weird. It's weird.
Mr. Hipkins was on breakfast this morning and kind of started off by that typical thing you get at the end of the year. Well, what do you think the government has done well? Oh, fuck me, I wasn't going to play this, but he kind of spins it and goes to talk about some realities as well. So let's have a listen to what Mr. Hipkins thinks that they've done well.
I mean, I made the call that we're not going to oppose the government on everything that they're doing just because it's them that's doing it. So in some of the areas around infrastructure, for example, trying to get a longer-term pipeline of infrastructure work that actually builds on work that we were doing in government, it's sensible stuff to do. We're not going to criticise them for doing that. So, yeah, there are always going to be things that we agree with. We're not going to disagree with them just for the sake of it. But, ultimately, I think the overall scorecard on this government's a pretty mixed one. And I think most Kiwis would feel...
That's pretty polite. I think it's we're talking about mongrel last night, Chippy. We know you guys were watching.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
Pretty mixed.
You can go, look, there's some stuff that we agree with, the infrastructure pipeline, but yada, yada, yada. But overall, their scorecard is fucking abysmal. Look at everything else.
This is what we're talking about last night.
I've had to go deep to find this one thing to say positive about them. Like putting the fines up on disabled parking. Good stuff.
Oh, did you hear today? Wellingtonians, the price of your public transport might be going up by 70%. Thanks,
Jesus
National.
Christ.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a mixed report. I mean, Chippy's a nice guy and he uses nice, polite words. But what happens often, and it happens in America more so, is often the media will grade the conservative or grade the right party on a curve. Like, just think about how they treat what Trump says and does versus how they treat what Biden says and does. And I don't know if it's so much of a habit here in New Zealand, but I can't imagine Luxon standing there and going, oh, it's a bit mixed. In fact, we're going to show you a clip where he calls them economic vandals. He calls them he calls Labour economic vandals. So they don't pull punches. So I'm just like, Chippy, you could be the Prime Minister if you wanted to, according to the chat.
I'll lead you all into a glorious future. Well,
can I lead,
not all
can
of
I,
you. There would
can
be
I
some
lead
sacrifices.
I want to be in charge of the Doge department for you. Can I do that? Can that be me? Anyway, sorry, interrupted. Chippy, a little bit more mongrel, please.
Feel like the change that they're getting from this government isn't necessarily...
I mean, actually, it's a good point he's making. But we're being quite pedantic about one word.
I think most Kiwis would feel like the change that they're getting from this government isn't necessarily the change they thought they were going to get when they voted at the last election.
So what is it that you think that the government haven't delivered on or have yet to deliver on?
God. Do we have enough time, Daniel? Do you have 4 hours? Can I take the next 3 slots?
Mixed message.
Well, if you take the main issue, which all New Zealanders I think are concerned about, which is the cost of living in the broader economy, they've taken what is a challenging time for the New Zealand economy and made it a lot worse. Their spending cuts have actually made the economic downturn.
seeing we criticised, we can do the other. Strong point.
There's one other
said
thing.
well.
I would helpful criticism, constructive criticism here. This would have been a perfect opportunity for Chippy to just mention us. Like, I don't have time to explain it all to you. I'm leader of the opposition. But if you want to catch up on what the government has done badly, you can see these guys, Woke Man Pat and Woke Barker, on big woke hairy news. They're on YouTube. They're great.
We'll send them a T-shirt. Remember we asked Julian.
Let's just bombard Chippy with merch. You don't have to wear a suit jacket, bro. Just these.
I've just had a new idea. What about something we do? Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm tangenting from this. We'll go back to it. What about like sponsor an MP? People can come and buy merch that we then send to the MP on their behalf. That's a great idea. Sponsor it. Don't do it because I'm not set up for that, but it's something to think about. Sponsor an MP. What about we could do, we could rebring back Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member, and you guys could sponsor an MP. Oh, that's a beautiful idea. I like that.
Nicola's going to need a new wardrobe just for T-shirts.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't message me and say, I've paid for that one. Can you send it to? Because I won't. All right. Don't do that. It's an idea. We're just brainstorming here, people.
New Zealand economy and made it a lot worse. Their spending cuts have actually made the economic downturn deeper than it needed to be. There's about 12,000 fewer people working in building and construction today than there were this time last year. And a big part of that is that the government have turned down the dial on all of the government's big infrastructure and spending projects. So they've stopped state house building. They paused all of the school infrastructure upgrades like school rebuilds and so on. The list could go on. This is a government that came in and just said, if the last government were doing it, we're just going to stop it, regardless of whether we think it was a good idea or not. And I think, we've got to get past that as a political cycle. That shouldn't be the way politics works.
From the government's own list of highlights, though, I noted that they talked about...
Government's list of highlights. Output, key markers, KPIs, annual quarter reports, our markers are.
The inflation's down, tax cuts, family boost are helping households financially, ram raids are down, police foot patrols are up, more money for Farmac. Your thoughts on those?
Well, I mean, if you look at the issues around inflation, the Reserve Bank have brought inflation down as they were projected to do before the election with their higher interest rates. In terms of the cost of living, any benefit that families got from tax cuts has been more than eroded by the extra costs that they're facing through things like rates increases, which this government have made worse.
Pharmacy bills, no more free buses. And we'll just remind you of these things, because what happens is people will forget these things before the next election. All the families that got the family boost, whatever it was, package, many of them with young kids are like, well, we're going to be spending more than that on their public transport to and from school now, so we're actually worse off. Very, very common story.
How's your grocery bills going?
Yeah.
Have they gone down? No.
Have we seen that downward pressure on your rent yet? Or is it increasing? I know in Dunedin rent's increasing. House prices due to go up 7% next year. That means mortgages will be bigger. That means rents will be going up. We continue.
Through things like insurance increases and other government costs, which have been going up because of the government's budget decisions. So, the people who are benefiting from this government's decisions are not everyday New Zealand households. There are some New Zealanders who are doing very, very well out of this government. If you're, Philip Morris, you're doing incredibly well out of them. You've got about $200 and something million in tax cuts.
Strong.
I don't think that's helping everyday, ordinary New Zealand households get ahead.
Strong finish. He stuck the landing, as they say, Chewy. I'm gonna convert you to sports analogies before the end of the year. They stuck the landing. Thoughts, Chewy?
Yes. Well, I think we interrupted him all the way through with our thoughts, but this both sides centrism. Just you can't do it, mate. You just can't. Like they never ever gave an inch when the roles were reversed.
Yeah.
So why do you feel that you need to be seen as reasonable? No, you can be reasonable and pissed off, because there's so much to be reasonably pissed off about.
Yeah.
Like we are seeing the wholesale vandalism of our institutions, our infrastructure. The cost of living has not changed. Like the family boost that they're talking about is so admin heavy. I think there'll be a bunch of people out there that'll just go, oh, fuck it, it's not worth it, which is exactly what the government want. If you don't apply for it, you don't get it. So, oh look, our costs have gone down.
Yeah,
you know, and that's all it is. And I need the leader of our largest opposition party to get right up in their shit. Just make their day miserable. Don't give them an inch, Chippy.
Well, here's the thing, right? And look, that was a really good, solid response from Chippy. We are being a bit finicky over one word, mixed results, because actually after what he said after that was all real good, real strong. But the thing is, if he didn't want to get up in their grill, is that what you said? I feel a bit uncomfortable saying that. If they didn't want to get up in their grill, there is one person who will. Two people, actually. One of them's David Seymour, and the other one is Winston Peters. We'll get to that clip next, but this, first of all, is Chippy talking about the interaction between Luxon and Seymour, you know, who's running the country, the stuff we covered up on last night.
Also, next year, Mr. Hipkins, we will see a change in Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, we've seen Winston Peters sit alongside Christopher Luxon, but come May next year, it will be David Seymour. What's your thoughts on the dynamics there for those two?
Yeah.
I don't think it's ultimately
incestuous, perhaps? No.
Going to make all that much difference.
No, that was some fan fiction I was reading this afternoon.
For those two.
I don't think it's ultimately going to make all that much difference. I mean, Winston Peters and David Seymour have been running circles around Christopher Luxon for the first year of government. I think that will probably continue right the way through to the election. David Seymour's even boasting about the fact that he has a disproportionate amount of influence given the size of his party vote at the last election. And I think that's really a reflection of the somewhat weak leadership that New Zealanders have seen from Christopher Luxon. Ultimately, he's letting David Seymour and Winston Peters call the shots. National got far more votes than that, but you wouldn't know that in the way they're behaving.
There you go.
Mr. Hipkins, as always.
Strong finish. So let's go straight to this last clip. Yesterday, of course, we had old, the keeper of the crypt. We had old mate Seymour. Sorry, it's burping there. Coming out and basically saying, I do much better than I should do, hinting that he's running Luxon. Well, Winston Peters today has said that he's struggling. He then tries to walk it back a bit, but even those words coming out of his mouth, that Luxon is struggling, is it interesting? You wonder why. Why are these two minor party leaders on two separate days? If they're not purposefully having a jab, then what they're doing isn't resulting in that anyway.
Winston Peters offering up an honest review of the fifth Prime Minister he's been in coalition with.
He's more of a detail than most Prime Ministers. That's a fact.
Don't celebrate clearing that hurdle too quickly.
The other side of the coin is, of course, he is struggling in a job.
Is Winston Peters right when he says that you're struggling in the job?
I'm enjoying this job and we're working very well together.
No, when I say struggling, not in a bad way, but when you're so...
He's struggling in a job, but not in a bad way. You know, like how all those good ways that you struggle in a job.
Very well together.
No, when I say struggling, not in a bad way, but when you're so new to politics, you're occupying the top job, it is foreseeable to take a little while to bed yourself in.
So he's not qualified to do the job. So he doesn't have, so what he's saying is that bald man on screen right now does not have the skill set to do this job. He's not struggling in a bad way. He's just not qualified to do the job. He doesn't have the skills to do the job. He doesn't have the nous to do the job. So he's struggling. That's what Winston Peters just said. He just said this guy is not good enough to do the job. Chewy, Winston's been watching. Your famous line, he is not good at this. He's struggling.
Let's see if I could do it, Winston. He's not very good at this. And then down a whiskey or a brandy or something. Smoke a cigar,
and have a cigar,
right off on
a cigar at the same time. Let's just watch the last. I've only got about 20 seconds because it's quite an amusing. There's quite an amusing wrap up. Gives Gina Lynch a bit of credit for this. It's pretty funny what Luxon doesn't say it on purpose, but the link she makes between Winston Peters and what Luxon does say.
Oh, I love Winston.
One can only imagine.
Hang on, I thought you didn't know who Winston
I'm
was.
hurting. I'm laughing.
You
but
didn't know
I'm
who Winston
sad.
was? I don't know the man.
Bed yourself in.
Oh, I love Winston.
One can only imagine how the Prime Minister would really like to respond.
Yeah, so it's really the dinosaur that's caused the problems here. I'd put the dinosaur into timeout. That's what I'd do.
So, yeah, credit, Credit to Jen and Lynch for putting those two things together. It's the dinosaur that's the problem here. I think the dinosaur needs to go in time to time out. Lovely finish. Credit to Jen and Lynch. But listen, the actual point is, oh man, I don't want to say Winston Peters is senile. I don't know that at all. But if he's not aware, if he thinks he's saying something that's not derogatory and bad, if he's not aware of that, then something's happened. So either means something's happened and he's not quite aware of what his words are going to do, or he's doing it for a reason. And if he's doing it for a reason and Seymour's doing it for a reason, what the hell's going on?
Oh, just sorry, I'm just trying to find something real quick. And you can tell how quick it is, but is that it? No, it's not it. No. I'm looking for the there it is. Got it.
This is great broadcasting.
I know, Pat, but how can we be mean to this? Fucking look at this. This is in black and white times, and he still looks like he's 40. This is me searching up younger Winston Peters.
Yeah, he's probably 14 there.
This is probably taken on the first camera imported into New Zealand on a sailboat, and he was there waiting for it.
Yeah, should we do a flash side by side? Ready? 1, 2. 1, 2.
Jesus.
1.
He's so old.
Isn't the nickname Methuselah? Anyway, Chewy, let's stop mocking the man and just have a look at the idea of Mr. Luxon getting kind of the shit taken out of him for a couple of days by his coalition partners. And even remember Seymour yesterday kind of laughing as he's walking away going, I think I've caused enough trouble for today. It's an interesting time. It's an interesting time.
This is a man. Remember Luxon's fucking tough guy routine when he was talking about beneficiaries earlier in the year? Look, I'm not going to apologize for being tough, and I'm the big tough man, and I am telling people how it's going to be because I am so fucking tough. But then the two people closest to him in the job, his two deputies, are tearing strips off him in the same week. And he's trying to laugh it off like it's nothing. Like it's weak.
Yeah. Week's the right thing. I mean, just think about yourself in a workspace. If you had someone who was your superior, you had to work with every day, and if you made a public statement that embarrassed them, like it just doesn't feel like it doesn't. Yeah, weak. I feel like there's no respect there, and they can basically do and say what they want. But then again, they have been all year anyway.
Yeah, you like in that sort of setting. If someone at your level or the next level down started shit talking, you'd take them aside and you'd read them the riot act.
Yeah,
like I don't see that. Like he's perfectly happy to be Mr. Tough Guy for beneficiaries and kids that don't go to school because he doesn't need to front those people. He does need to front Winston and Seymour, and he doesn't seem to be confident enough to do it because this is not his game.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Let's have a look at some of these chats that are coming in. My Uncle John from Jamaica says, here's $8.99. Thank you, your Uncle John. Mr. Arvid says, a chippy T-shirt fund fee. The Palm says, how about a Nicky No Boats tie? I think they have rules about going into the house having like patterns and stuff on their ties. Because obviously, imagine what every former activist Green Party member would have on their clothes if they could. They'd be dressed like a NASCAR driver. I think they have to. There's rules in there about being as plain as you can be, I think. Shirt idea. National KPI list unchecked. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. Shout out to my old IT colleagues at the Heath. The Health. And of KPIs, still want to hear from Ian Taylor. Let me also remind you, seeing we're kind of spreading our family notices through the show today, and say a huge thanks to all of our patrons. If you're enjoying what you're watching tonight, maybe you're a lurker, maybe you're someone who's been involved for a while, maybe you have just found us and you go, hey, who are these dudes? We should find out more about these. Then you can be a part of what we do in a month. Obviously, we get a bit of money. We make some cash on the merch. Although this month is a lot of it's going into paying stuff off. But these are the people who kind of help us pay the power bills and stuff, pay the software, pay the Adobes every single month. And we kind of treat that a bit like a personal conversation. I let people know what's going on. We give them early notice. We put in their early interviews if we record them. There you go. We have little chats about it, some sexy pictures. And then that was an early notice from Sam. Sam came on and we released that interview early, that sort of thing as well. And then we have monthly meetups as well. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, if you want to be a part of us, it is patreon.com/Big Hero News. Many other ways that you can support us. You're doing it right now by watching, sharing our stuff around, telling people about us, be our advocates. And we love to have you on board in any kind of way. Anything from you, Chewie?
Look, I knew this time would come, Pat. I knew it would happen. People are asking for underwear.
Blowing a foo-foo. That sounds
nothing.
I think that blowing the foo-foo would be better on a pair of Y fronts, like nice and tight. That's what I think it'd be better as. How do you feel about that? Don't you think that would be better than boxers? I do.
It would be something.
I'm going to share one other thing with you before we go into the last story, because I don't often interact on Twitter. You all know that, but I had some fun today. Let me have a bit of fun with you. So November 26th, what is that? Oh, it is yesterday. So yesterday I put out this tweet, and it was based on the conversation that we had. According to David Seymour, dividing by ethnicity never works, other than where it does, of course, remembering that when he says ethnicity, what he's saying is Indigenous people. So that's what he's saying. Someone, and this is all public, so I haven't blocked it off. Someone called Bart says, do you think we should have different privileges based on our race? And then I said, hey, Bart, assuming you own a home, do you have privileges and rights on that property that I don't have? Is that privilege you have based on your race or your contractual agreement with the council and the bank? Do you agree with adhering to those agreements that bind you contractually? What's the difference? To which they said, is that seriously the best you can do? Some diversion that in no way addresses my question. Is that seriously you not wanting to answer the question? He then says, I have no issues with the principle of property ownership. Now, can you answer this? Do you think that we should have different privileges and rights based on our race? My response: I think people should have different rights and privileges based on the contracts they or their representatives negotiate and sign. Race has nothing to do with it. The original landowners made an agreement with the Crown. That agreement needs to be upheld. Do you disagree? His response: do you disagree? 100% agree with you. Now, what specifically is it about Seymour's bill that you think contradicts these strongly held principles we both agree on? That wasn't
breaking the treaty.
That wasn't the contract. That wasn't the conversation. That wasn't the I wasn't having that conversation with you. So I just said, thank you for being honest and conceding. To which it looks like he's responded. I haven't read this. Shall I go see what the response is? Should we do it live? We'll do it live. Here we go. I'm thinking it's not going to be that gracious. That's what I'm thinking. We'll have a look. Oh, wrong one. That one. Just click on it. So what specifically is it about Seymour's bill that you think contradicts these strongly held principles we both agree on?
So just repeated his question again. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I wasn't talking to you about that.
Well, who knew that you were going to interact with the king of debating?
I did appreciate that he 100% agrees with me when I said race has nothing to do with it. I 100% agree with you, even though his first question was, should we be different privileges based on race? This has got nothing to do with race. I 100% agree with you. So there's a welcoming and charitable interaction off the cesspit that is it is Twitter, whānau. Hope you enjoyed that for tonight. there's other Twitter stuff
I'm
to
glad
talk
you
about
brought up
tonight
the
as well.
fact that it is a cesspit. I was tagged so many times today because we were talking about a haunted pile of ham offcuts last night, and of course, because he's a sensitive wee soul, he reacted by sharing our video. Thank you, Sean. Your support is, as always, valued.
Thanks,
We
Ollie.
like that you put our little show in front of some of New Zealand's worst eyeballs, operated by some of New Zealand's weakest brains. We really appreciate it. But that's where our new screen names have come from in the comments from Sean sharing our video. The Avengers of Woke Man Pat and his sidekick.
Yeah,
that's the
right.
only thing I have a problem with. Sidekick. And his sidekick, Woke Backer. Well done.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
No, that's an appropriate label for Chewy. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We should probably show them the original tweet as well, because it's pretty funny. Because apparently, I mean, we do talk about the content, but I never ever share his stuff. He constantly tells us that we're triggering him while sharing our stuff. So apparently, we have been triggered to point out where he basically got very close to calling TJ Perinara an uppity N-word, which is the sentence you used, and that was exactly what I was thinking when he talked to him about being a bit lippy, you know? It's like,
hey,
yep.
Sean, if you're listening, and we know that you are, just a little piece of career advice. Your career trajectory is supposed to go up. Just saying. You have to go uppies.
Why would you interact with us? What a waste of time we are. Go after some bigger
He's
fish.
fragile. He's fragile because he's a wee snowflake. Yeah. And everything he hates is woke. He doesn't understand.
Woke to him means anything I disagree with. Literally, that's what he thinks it means. I've done a podcast with him. It literally means that. Right. Let's get to the last conversation from today, because this is featuring our hairless leader on Radio New Zealand. I've got a couple of clips. The first one's actually longer than I thought. We'll see if there's a cutout point on the way through, but it's a good clip. It's probably 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes. And they're talking about the cost of living. And this is the point where our hairless leader is happy to take responsibility for the good stats, but he will not be culpable for the bad stats. He's happy to take responsibility for getting inflation down, or to get the credit for, but he will not take the responsibility for increasing the unemployment numbers. And of course, blame Labor. That's your basic message.
Heading into the government, you named the cost of living crisis as the number one priority. Obviously, inflation is now back down at 2.2%. A year ago, it was at 5.6%. Why should we thank the government for that, as opposed to the Reserve Bank?
No, I want to be really clear. The last Labor government was a disaster economically. They were economically illiterate and frankly.
I just really want to ask him. I don't think he's ever going to talk to us, right? But I really want to ask him. So when we went through that period, and New Zealand came up in, like, say, let's just say top 10 in the world for economic response to COVID and how we came out of it. How does that, where do you think they should have come? Like, should they have come first in the world and then they wouldn't have been an economic disaster? If they came out sort of top 10 or even top 20, where should they have come for you to think they weren't an economic disaster? Because obviously, we all know that, and one of the reasons inflation went up is, I'll use their verbiage, that, Labor printed money, and the reason they printed money was to keep people alive, allow sick people to stay at home, and to save businesses. So what part, and which means we paid a bit more of a tail at the other end for inflation, when other countries who just went and killed all their people and didn't give a shit about the businesses came out of it more quickly. I'm still okay with that payoff. More alive New Zealanders, more saved businesses, and a slightly longer tail. I'm okay with that payoff. He's not. So what would he have wanted to see done? How would he have not described them as economic vandals? And we did this with, I always get the Woods mixed up, the Dunedin national guy. Michael Wood? No? Which Wood was Dunedin? Michael Wood.
No, it wasn't one.
There's like 3 of them. Anyway, when he was on, we were talking about inflation. Woodhouse, that's it. When he was on and we were talking about inflation, and it was like at about 5.4% at the time during COVID. And I said, what number would it need to be for you, Michael Woodhouse, to not think it's a terrible deal? And he was like, 5, 4.5. And I'm like, well, so that's what they're talking about, So you've got to press into them and say, okay, you think this is bad. How does it need to look for you think it to be good? How did they need to come out of COVID, Mr. Luxon, for you to think that it wasn't an economic disaster? And to be fair, He'd have no answer. I know he'd have no answer because we know this is rhetoric.
Economic vandals. They forgot the lessons of economics, and there are immutable laws on economics. And I talked to the media when I became the leader of the National Party. I remember standing up there and saying to you guys, hey, listen, there's amber lights on the dashboard here, adjust, 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 so we don't have to deal with the consequences of inflation back in an economy. And the reality is this: when you have fiscal policy where a government increased spending by 84%, that drove up inflation, it drove up 12 interest rate rises. That then put the economy into recession.
It saved businesses, it kept people alive, it allowed sick people to stay home from work and not infect other people. Doesn't mention those ones, does he?
What was the context
of
that spending?
Exactly. It's such a good question to ask in any interview, you know. Why did they do that? Why did they spend that more money, Mr. Luxon? What was the reason for it?
Were they bailing out airlines?
Very good.
Leads to people laying off jobs, and the job layoffs are the last things that happen because businesses hang in there with high costs around inflation, high costs around interest rates, recession, suppressed demand, and then ultimately they're forced into a very difficult place of laying people off, and we've seen some of that actually in the last 3 to 4 months. That is the lag effect of the mismanagement. And if you
so did you get that? The lag effect of the mismanagement means we can ride this blame Labor bus for a good while yet, because the lag effect of mismanagement will be with us for a while. Joey, you want to jump in there for anything?
This is just an anecdotal story, so give it all the weight that it deserves because of that. But as we were going into lockdown, when they said this pandemic was bad, I interacted with a business owner who had come into the shop to buy something before he went bush, and he had laid off 25 workers. Just at the drop of a hat. Don't know where this is going. Cut everyone loose. Now I'm going up into the hills to hunt deer or something like that. Didn't even seem like he gave a shit. Now that's what businesses would have done fucking near wholesale. Because if you can draw your payroll down to zero, awesome. But the government threw out a lifeline. It paid them to pay their workers. So mortgages got paid, rents got paid, supermarkets could still make money, because the alternative to that is the government wholesale having to feed everyone.
Yeah.
So that's why that was done. So when Luxon talks about this government being economic vandals and refusing to acknowledge the context in which that increased spending exists, having to pay everybody's mortgage, everybody's rent, everybody's payroll, everybody's food bills, and scale up the health system to a level that we've never seen before, that's the context that exists. This man doesn't acknowledge it because he's a buffoon. He is an intellectual toddler, and all he can say is the worst things about the previous government and ignore the fact that what he's doing to our economy, going upstream against all the expert advice from Treasury, from some of our biggest banks, from some of our richest people that actually still have a conscience, they're all idiots. We don't believe in economists. We're just going to wing it. And it's not working. It isn't working for the majority of New Zealanders, the New Zealanders that you said you would be, the leader of the government for all New Zealanders, whether you voted for National or not. You're a bullshit liar and a vandal.
And if you ever want to check that out, I was looking for this. Spinoff did a really good thing of, and this, I'm not going to go through all of it, it's too long, but
love a graph.
A report card, 8 charts showed how New Zealand managed the pandemic. And we're talking about the economy. So, we can go cases per million. We're not really worried so much about that, and death and excess mortality, which we did very well in, vaccination rate, which we did very well in, stay home orders did well in. Okay, here's inflation. So the red one's New Zealand, right? So New Zealand's 7.3. It's not good. It's not a nice thing to sound, but compared to there's the OECD, 9.71, USA, 8.6, Ireland, 7.95, United Kingdom, 7.9. So, better or comparable to most. Unemployment rate. USA got up to 13.
Comparing ourselves to Ireland, don't we?
USA got up to 13%. Look at New Zealand. Oh, because we saved all those businesses and saved all those jobs. And yes,
the curve.
I'll say again, yes, we had a bit of a longer tail. But the reason we had a longer tail is because we spent money looking after people and looking after businesses. Quarterly GDP, you know, we didn't drop off the map so much, came back, did well. New Zealand's the red line there. Back to about everyone else. Australia 0.89, New Zealand 1.71, that'll be double. OECD 0.4. So when he says it, that there needs to be a context here of what does that mean? You say that they handled it so badly. I've seen these graphs. They must all be lies, Mr. Luxon, but they say in that time we didn't do too bad. Explain that to me, and there'll be no response. There'll be no response other than perhaps CEO talk and measurement of KPIs and targets and that kind of stuff.
He keeps getting to say this unchallenged.
Yep. Well, I guess in fairness, let's see if he gets challenged. Shall we? Okay.
Let's see.
You care about working people, you are a fiscal conservative because the pain and suffering that comes on the back of that.
Did you
is
hear
what
that?
We've seen with this Labour experiment for the last, some of that actually.
If you care about working people, you are a conservative.
The last 3 to 4 months, that is the lag effect of the mismanagement. And if you care about working people, you are a fiscal conservative because the pain and suffering that comes on the back of that.
I think what he means is if you care about the CEOs who under them have working people. I think that's what he means. I think he's got mixed up.
Is what we've seen with this Labour experiment for the last 6 years. So they took the keys to the car and they drove it full bore into a big ditch, and we're now hauling it out of the ditch and getting it turned up the right way and getting into first and second gear. So you have to have fiscal policy and financial discipline matching with monetary policy, not one where the foot's on the accelerator on fiscal policy, spraying money around as it was under Robertson and Ardern and Hipkins, and then equally the Reserve Bank trying to take interest rates up.
Isn't it just interesting as well that he's having a conversation around his first year and he spent half to 2/3 of this answer talking about Labour? So he has this election mentality, electioneering mentality, where he can go them bad, them bad, them bad, but it hasn't gone away. We want to know about what you've done. This is what the reporter's doing. It's your first year. What have you achieved? And what he's talking about is he's using all those same talking points that he used pre-election. This is feeling a bit 2000 and late to me, Mr. Luxon.
Causing that instability, and you need, as the Reserve Bank Governor says, good mates fiscally, and that's what we've done.
You mentioned working people. Can you explain to me why you should not, for the exact same reason you spell out when you talk about fiscal policy, also be blamed for the unemployment rate?
Good question.
Which we've seen a year ago it was at 3.9%. Now it's at 4.8%, 30,000 more people unemployed.
Yeah, tough times and a consequence of Labour mismanagement. And I want you to be...
Did you hear how quickly that came off the tongue?
Can you hear how insincere? Tough times. I've seen those words put together. I have no concept of what it means. I've never had a tough time.
How quickly he came to Labour mismanagement. So the unemployment rate today, remember how many people they've cut from the public sector, is the fault of Labour. And I'll say this again, we've said this twice in the last few weeks. Craig Rennie comes on and he says to us, of course unemployment's going to go up when inflation comes down. That's how it works. But anything over 4.5% is a choice that this government's making. So this government is choosing to drive, through their policies, maybe not through what they're saying, but through their policies and their cuts, to drive unemployment higher than it needs to be. Just have a listen again how quickly blame Labour comes off his lip when he gets asked a question about their policies.
Now it's at 4.8%, 30,000 more people unemployed.
Yeah, tough times and a consequence of Labour mismanagement. And I want you to be really clear about it because we learned these economic lessons 35 years ago.
It does sound like a CEO. It does sound like a CEO going, you know, we here at Pepsi, tough times at Coke, but they don't know what they're doing. You know, it really does have that vibe to it, like as opposed to being a politician who's talking about driving a country.
And this generation of media, of politicians, is having to relearn it, which is that spending drives inflation, which drives interest rates, which drives growth, which drives ultimately employment. And those 5 things are very linked and they're sequential. And so what we've done is got the spending under control. We've got interest rates back within the band, first time in 3.5 years, back at 2.2%. We've had 2 rate cuts, hopefully another one at the end of this week.
Not you. You have no control over that. This is consistency, people. Governments have very little control over inflation, especially when you're a small South Pacific nation that trades goods and has to import them. We have fuck all control over our own inflation. We have overseas owned banks, we export and we import. Governments don't have any effect on that. The free market. Don't claim that you did that. You fucking did not do that.
All right, we're going to try and get to the end of this. We've actually still got a couple of minutes to go.
This week, then we've also got confidence rising, but we now need to see that translate into growth, into jobs.
But
so cost of living is about inflation and interest rates. Growth and jobs is what we've got to work on
But
next.
do you own that? Do you own that the decisions you've made have resulted in unemployment going up?
No, I disagree. Unemployment.
Well, how can you claim both? How can you claim that, your argument is effectively that you've brought back inflation by cooling the economy via fiscal policy, but that has also resulted in higher unemployment.
Yes.
Because you've got a sequential effect where if you're a business owner, and I've come from a business world, you can hang out there for a long time while you've got costs going.
Come from a business world. I'm a businessman. I'm a businessman. You may not have heard this, reporter friend, but I used to run Air New Zealand. I don't talk about it very much. I'm a businessman.
Through the roof, up 30%. You can hang out while you've got interest rates going through the roof. You can hang out for a little bit while you've actually got demand.
Needless to say, I'm done with him for now. Needless to say, he, as the reporter there said, and I'm sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name, but as the reporter says there, Luxon is saying overtly that they cooled the economy, right? That National gets responsibility for cooling the economy. Part of cooling the economy is unemployment going up, but they'd had nothing to do with that. Not us. What the hell is that dog doing?
Melting.
It just seems wrong. I don't know. She's melting. Get rid of her.
Yeah, like this is classic stuff. We want to own all the good stuff, and we don't want a piece of all the bad stuff.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, if you want to carry the can for something that is directly linked, like I still remember the big banks going, "Oh, we need to shed fucking 50,000 jobs to get the interest rate down," and that was just no, we don't do that. Like we got through a pandemic with almost record unemployment. That is mental. Like last time there was a global pandemic, there were fucking soup kitchens.
Well, just remember as well, and this is the thing about the pandemic, right, and what we think is successful. There was about, I think, 7 countries in the world whose life expectancy went up after the pandemic. And we were one of them. And I think that's worth a heck of a lot more than an extra 6 months of inflation, personally.
Okay, if I had my way and I could coerce these guys to come on, these are the questions that I'd ask.
Big business boy.
You won the election before COVID. Okay, there's no Jacinda. We've got Luxon. We've got Bishop. We've got who we've got now. We wipe your memory of what Labor did. What would you do? And we only have the statements of those guys made during that time, what they would do.
Yeah.
Simon Bridges. God damn, we'd be doomed.
Well, he was going to, hang on, we know though.
The borders,
well, he said it. He said it. And New Zealand en masse, including his supporters, became apoplectic towards him. And that's probably one of the main things that caused him to lose the leadership. So we know what they would have done. They would have opened the borders. And then they went, oh, not popular. We'll stick around and actually we'll just agree with these guys on the other side until agreeing with them doesn't become popular. And then we'll flip again. Because remember, everything that passed during COVID, from the mandates to all that kind of stuff, National signed off on. They didn't put up a fight then, but when it became convenient and the tide of public opinion started to change thanks to things like the disinformation dozen, all of a sudden they found their moral voice to push back against all this authoritarian left. No. Go back and look at the record. They supported all of those policies.
Enough. People should isolate their own homes with nobody checking on them. All of this sort of stuff. How quick? This is why they don't want to give context to those questions. They don't want us to think about how good our pandemic response was and how good the Labor government was to prioritise people first. And that as far as I'm concerned, if he wants to go, well, if you're concerned about workers, you're a fiscal conservative. Yeah, I'm a fiscal conservative. Sure. The government's job, above all things, in this man's opinion, is to look after the country they're leading's population, their healthcare, their education, their personal security.
Keep them safe.
Keep them safe.
Yeah.
Because it is the population that then go out and work for the business and make the proper, make the products, make the exports, sell New Zealand overseas, all of everything that keeps going. It is people first before everything else. Business is adaptable. Business evolves. Bad businesses fold. They don't last. Good businesses grow and they adapt. Business will always be there. And the problem that we have in this country is productivity, because the businesses aren't investing in people. They aren't investing in creating new things because they can't get the investment because people are putting their money in houses. And we keep saying it. Big boy business who's done a big business from time to time doesn't get that. Like, he sounds like he does. It's like you could nod and go, oh, yes, I don't know anything about the economy. That sounds really, really good. He doesn't either. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, everything that he says, it's always projection.
Yep.
Like, we could go through to the mirror universe tomorrow and see Christopher Luxon with a dark goatee who led New Zealand through a pandemic response. We'd be still talking about the mass graves.
There is one more clip I want to play, but it's only a minute because I think this is important as well. Because remember, these guys told us about getting into surplus and how good they were going to be with the economy. So what happens when Luxon gets asked now? Remember, we'll judge them on the standards they held the last government to and the standards they set for themselves, right? And they've set a standard for themselves about getting back into surplus, but everyone's telling us, including Treasury, that's looking a bit wonky. 60 seconds, let's have a listen.
Moment, because the Crown accounts are predicted to get much worse. Remind me when you intend to get back to surplus?
Again, we'll have more to say about that as Haifu comes out before Christmas.
Do you remain committed to 27-28?
Again, we'll have more to say when we see the forecasts and the latest updates coming forward.
Do you accept that if you are to get back to surplus by then, you will need to make severely deep cuts or raise revenue somewhere else?
No, what we've got to do is grow our economy, and that's what we have to do. And that's what we are doing, is we're putting in place the conditions for future growth. New Zealand has exceptional potential. That's what actually motivates me more than ever. I feel incredibly optimistic about it. You've only got to go out in the world and realise we've got so much great natural advantage in the Indo-Pacific region, fastest growing part of the world, that want New Zealand products and services. Massive opportunity with abundant natural resources, so therefore we shouldn't have an energy security policy problem or energy security problem thanks to the last government. We do this year, but we've got to be able to
blame Labor.
Fix that. We've got to make sure that we've got good social democratic institutions. When you look at the health of democracies around the world, we're in good shape. And finally, when you look at we've got good people. So there is no reason why we can't build the best country on planet Earth, period.
To be clear though, you're not giving me a commitment that you'll get back to surplus 27-28.
Well, again, I'm just conscious that we've got Haifu coming out in a few weeks, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that.
But that's been a commitment in the past.
When we see the forecasts, we'll talk more about that.
There you go. I was just thinking though, Chewy, this whole blame Labor thing, yeah? I can understand why they would do it pre-election, because they wanted to say Labor bad, us good, hire us. The reason they're doing it now is because they're embarrassed about their record. I mean, what's the reason to, like, it's not going to get you elected. Like, if they started doing it in like a year from now again because they want to get elected, sure, scaremongering, I understand the tactic. But why they're doing it now, there's two reasons they're doing it now. Either he's still electioneering, which it could be, and he doesn't know how to speak in any other way, or he's trying to run away from things and put the blame on someone else. And I think it's probably the latter, because he even said it there, every chance he gets, he wants to get graded on a curve. We talked about this earlier when the media does that to the right. He wants to get graded on a curve because, basically they took over from a bunch of people who just all, literally blew the whole economy apart. And he wants to keep saying it, and the media, in some level, in some instances, are doing that grading on a curve thing because they're not going, explain that. Let's unpack that, shall we? Yeah. Anyway.
I would be a terrible interviewer because I would dump all of my questions the moment that he did that and just fucking dial in. I want to jump on something because he mentioned the energy, Labor's fault we had an energy crisis.
Yeah.
I saw a figure, I think it was middle of last week, that our dams are at near full capacity going into summer.
Mm-hmm.
And our power generation was at, I think, 94% renewable.
Wow.
So I guess National filled the dams somehow,
Yeah.
We've had just this week a major solar installer, big business that's been around since the 70s, fold because that was bought up by an overseas investment company that's just cut them loose.
Right.
So like if he wants to be concerned about energy security and resilience, why aren't we seeing any government action on something like that? Don't know, because we're not concerned about that. We're friends with oil and gas now. Nicola Willis's dad demands action.
I think we're done, team. Any other super chats we want to get to? I want to say as well, if you enjoyed Gary tonight, make sure you head to his Substack, Dr. Gary Payinda's Substack. It's just Dr. Gary Payinda, Payinda.substack.com, and you can sign up there. I'll put this link in the show notes, and we'll make sure when we do some clips of that, it's mentioned in there as well. But if you're interested, Dr. Gary Payinda, his Substack is available where he goes, more in depth in some of these conversations. Yep. Super chats. Douglas just does a super sticker. Joseph Douglas.
Trust me, Pat, that was a good super sticker.
It was good super sticker.
Right.
Brilliant. Mr. Arvid said he's so out of touch, talking about Luxon. Peter Syme rhymes with time. It's a pity our health system is so bad because this guy is going to make me stroke out.
You can get foo-foo valves installed in the private sector, though, let me assure you.
Luxon is a sleazy liar, full stop, says Brian. And that is Brian's honest held belief. So no lawsuits. Another one from Brian, 2 in a row. Luxon would make a good brothline. Okay.
Doesn't need any elaboration.
Well, because he's a businessman. He does business. I do business.
Big business boy. Done up big business.
Boy, putting his big business boy pants on. Business. And Mr. Arvids again, Luxon only knows shareholder value. He doesn't understand the people are the shareholders. Yeah, that's an interesting point. All right, team, that's us for tonight. Is there anything we need to go out on, Chewy? Remember, this is your last probably 67, 80, 81 minutes to go and nominate us for a podcast award. Remember, the link to the podcast.
I think you said it's announced tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The winners?
Yeah. All those other people who win something.
We'll see.
Those. Do you remember?
My mama cry.
You may not remember, but in the first year, because these are only like 4 years old, in the first year where these did these, RNZ put some entries in, and one of the announcers who won one of the podcast awards sent a tweet out going, I didn't know I made a podcast, but we won an award. I'm just like, yep, you fucking, that's about exactly right. And that's, a lot of people pulled out after that. They're like, why would we entertain this where radio shows are being put up as podcasts when they're not? But anywho, that's my business. No, I don't care. It's not. We'll make, if the listener award, Chewy, is the only one that matters. Unless, of course, we win anything else, then that's going to matter as well, but we won't. And thank you. I've seen some patrons signing up tonight. Thank you if you have been a part of us. If you want to be a bit more of a part of us and have a bit more interaction with us and help support what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News is going across the bottom of the screen right now. If you just start a couple of chats, do you want to?
I just saw it really nice. Yeah, but been enjoying your videos, BHN, not just live chat. Thank you again.
Yeah. When we get closer to Christmas, we'll tell you about what's happening with BHN and what we've done and how we've grown. But I did the numbers.
State of the nation.
I did the numbers just out of interest for the last week, as in last week, versus the same week last year. And it went from, this is only the show, like the live show you're watching right now, not the clips, not the repeats, not the anything, just the show. So that week a year ago was about total of 5,000 views. That week this time was a total of 25,000 views. So just the shows, nothing else. And the clips and stuff are going much more ballistic. And Maui-san and others who are watching and enjoying them, thank you, because I know people are also sharing them around. So it helps. It helps a whole heap. All right. I think that's us done diddly undies. And
now remember, people, Pat might have plans to be somewhere away from the merch printers tomorrow. He might want to go for a walk outside, see the sky. Ruin that for him. Order merch. Make sure he's back to work.
More importantly, Chewy, and I think it'll momentarily slipped your mind, do you remember who's coming on the show tomorrow night?
Mr. John Toogood.
John Toogood, joins us tomorrow night.
Try and maintain my shit. I may lose it.
And other than that, big news, Whānau. We think we got Discord fixed. Jason came around today, technical Jason came around today and did a bit of work for us and did a bit of this, did a bit of that, pushed a few buttons, and it seemed to work. So how about tomorrow night we have an ambition that will open up Discord, because we haven't really chatted on that for probably a couple of months. So how about we do that for tomorrow night? Because, I'm hoping it works. It looks like it's working. But we'll see how it all goes. But yes, it should be working. So I guess we'll talk to you tomorrow night, team.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions with.
Sorry, I was just going to mention, we've had Super Groove, mates with the original drummer. He's been on. We've had Super Groove on. They've already been a part of us. An original member's been on.
Again.
Yeah. So we're just saying.
Worried to mention, other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and will be analyzed by Butchery and Pat, with the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, lovely people. That's it for us. We're done and dusted, and we'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to Dr. Gary for coming and joining us as well. Always an absolute legendary visit. And we'll see you tomorrow night from 9. Hooroo.
Cheers, man. Bed, Sean. Late. No, puppy.